In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos postgame reaction podcast brought to you by Funny Bone Broth after a 30-23 victory for your Toronto Argonauts over the visiting Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Ben Grant joined by JB as always. JB, that felt pretty good from start to finish. I don't think you could have asked for much more from the Argos with a dominant win at home.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, checked all the boxes. Everything we hoped to see, they did. Winnipeg doesn't score that late touchdown, and I think it looks like an even more dominating win. Really, really happy. Fantastic job by the team.
And if you look at the box score, it doesn't look like a 30-23 game, like you're saying. It was dominated without a few plays here and there. And I don't know if we can call that last Winnipeg touchdown sort of garbage time touchdown. I don't really think it was. I think that was a real drive that they put together. They were still in it at that point, but only mathematically. The stats look like a blowout win for the Argos. So let's go through a recap and talk about a few things that we saw. But yeah, there's so much that I'm excited about with this game. So first off, I want your opinion on the coin toss and what ensued. So the Argos received the kickoff in both the first and second halves. And the reason for that is there was a pretty heavy wind coming from the south. And so Winnipeg won the coin toss. They deferred, so the Argos decided to take the ball because you kind of have to at that point or you're not getting the ball. And Winnipeg wanted to choose side. They wanted to be with the wind in the second quarter, which is a longer quarter. And then in the second half, where the team that deferred would typically take the ball, they again chose side. So they have the wind at their back in the fourth. And so it gave the Argos an extra possession, which I thought was pretty bold, especially that second half decision where they're now trailing at that point. And, and it really hadn't been in the game at all. You would think you'd want your offense to get out there and try and get back into the game at that point because it was 22-14 at the half. So thoughts on those decisions, JB, on the coin toss and everything that followed?
Yeah, I think that's overthinking it, by Winnipeg and maybe being a little too cute. Wind, of course, is a factor, but I mean, to me, unless it's 70 kilometers an hour, I mean, just absolutely game-changing, there's no way I pick wind over ball.
Yeah, that's what I said to a few people that were asking on Twitter. They were saying, why does this happen? Why would they do that? I have seen scenarios where it made sense, but it's extreme weather. And it's like you're talking about 70 kilometer an hour winds or absolute downpour and one side of the field is a disaster or something like that. In that case, then yeah, you may want to think about that. But I didn't feel like the wind was strong enough to necessitate kicking off both in the first and second half. So I thought that was a pretty big misstep by Winnipeg. So the Argos came out, put a nice drive together, put 3 points on the board. How nice is it to have Boris Bede out there who it's on the Winnipeg 45 and it's not even a thought. No one even flinches in the stadium and he walks out for a 52-yard field goal. He had about 20 yards to spare on it because he had the wind behind him as well. It's such a luxury.
He was absolutely on fire tonight. All 3 field goals he piped dead center. No sway to them at all. His kickoffs, he was booming. He was absolutely dialed in tonight. So that's great to see. I mean, if he can maintain that, he may have other people come looking for him because if he can consistently deliver that is an absolute asset for the team.
And it wasn't lost on Argo fans watching Tyler Crapigna struggle, who was with the Argos in 2019. And you could just see the difference. It was so clearly displayed for everybody. Even in pregame warmup, where Crapigna is kind of maxing out at about 42 yards, where he feels comfortable. And there's Boris Bede kicking them from 58. So it's a much different situation.
For that kick, Crapigna, there's no... I mean, I've never felt more confident that a kick was going to be missed.
Yeah, it's just too much distance, and he ended up pulling it because he's trying to get too much into it. And it's just not, he's a really accurate kicker, 42 and under. but that's where you max out. And it's such a luxury to have someone like Boris Bede who can just blast it from all over the field, because it didn't even feel like that drive moved very far. And yet, there the Argos were kicking this 52-yard field goal. So they go up 3-0. They add a touchdown. Same quarter. You must have been thrilled, because your wish of scoring 10 points in the first quarter, that was done in the first 7 minutes as DJ Foster ran in for a 10-yard touchdown to make it 10-0.
Absolutely. I'm 2 for 2 on wishes, and I'm really, really over the moon. I'm just so happy to see that they came out and were aggressive and pushed for points early. If they can keep that mentality going, I think we really have something. It was fantastic to see.
I was getting a little nervous in the second quarter. So Argos are up 13-0 at that point, driving as well, all the way down to the Winnipeg 18-yard line. And so you're thinking, well, it's going to be at least 16-0, maybe 20-0, the way they were moving the ball. And then suddenly that 83-yard scoop and score for the Blue Bombers, Arbuckle rolling to his right, thought he had more time than he did, and he gets the ball knocked away by, I think it was Jeffcoat that knocked it away as he was trying to throw. He didn't quite have his arm going forward, and then Briggs ended up returning it for an 83-yard touchdown. What happened on that play, JB?
A lot of terrible things. I would imagine that play is going to get a lot of play in a lot of different rooms. The left tackle definitely did not know the snap count, because he froze on the snap of the ball, and Jeffcoat ran past him, which wasn't great. And unfortunately, White was in, and he did not pick up Jeffcoat. He was looking in the middle for a rusher who wasn't coming, as Jeffcoat was decapitating our quarterback. And, Arbuckle just has to get rid of that ball faster and not believe that he can outrun Jeffcoat,
who had a head start on him as well.
Yeah, just come on.
Now, Arbuckle was saying after the game, he was taking some blame for that, which, again, good quarterbacks do that. And, I don't know how much of it was his fault. So what he was saying was happening on a few plays, but that one, I think, fits into the sort of package that he was talking about of plays that sort of went wrong at the snap. He was really trying to change up the snap count, and he was trying to do sort of have a dummy snap count as well, just to see if he could get Winnipeg to tip their hand so he could see what the coverage is. We talked about that a few weeks ago, like how much of an advantage it is throwing the football when you know what the coverage is going to be. And Arbuckle, especially being a film guy like he is, he's a film junkie and is in the film room. He's probably in there right now. And, for a guy like him to know the coverage pre-snap is massive. And so he kept trying to do this. And he said that some of the communication evidently wasn't clear. And I believe on that play, it may not actually have been on Allen. That ball may have come early. It may have come on the wrong count. So I don't know if we can blame Allen or blame the center.
Freeze the shot on the snap of the ball. It's really quite something.
I have it up in front of me right now, and it looks ridiculous. It looks like Allen doesn't know he's in a football game, but that may not be his fault though. He may be diligently waiting, thinking Jeffcoat's running offside.
It looks like somebody who's been yelled at a lot about false starts, and whatever's going to happen, he is not going to false start.
And that actually fits sort of the narrative of the last couple of weeks. So that's exactly what happened, I'm sure. And the problem with that fumble too, not only did it suddenly make this a game, and it really shouldn't have been. Like at the end of the first quarter, Winnipeg had 8 yards of offense. And at that point, they still had 8 yards. We were now several minutes into the second quarter. They still had 8 total yards of offense. And suddenly it's a 1-touchdown game. The other problem that caused is that I noticed it made Arbuckle a little bit more nervous in the pocket. Maybe that's a good thing, but there were a few times where he threw the ball away sooner than he had to, because I think he, heard the doors closing, and was worried about a scenario like that. There was one moment deep in his own end where he got rid of the ball and there was no one really near him, but it had been a few seconds, and so he's like, I got to get this out because I don't want to I don't want to, cost our team another touchdown here.
Well,
So
I'm sure he was concerned about keeping his arm attached to his body.
yeah, and there were a few fumbles. Arbuckle, I guess there were 5 in total, but Arbuckle responsible, I think, for 4 fumbles, maybe 3. I don't know if you attribute that high snap to Arbuckle. I think
there's nothing you can do about
that's
that.
more in the center. So 3 that he's responsible for, but in each scenario, they were. It wasn't really him. It's hard to blame him. It didn't feel like he was holding on to the ball too long. It was just sometimes that Winnipeg pass rush is going to get home. And, on a few occasions it did. So as we continue through the second quarter, Toronto adds another field goal, and then Winnipeg makes it really close. They close it down 16-14 on a bomb to, I think it was Adams, 51-yard bomb. And this was a play where Jamal Peters got beat, and I still don't know exactly what happened on the play. Initially, when I saw it, it looked like he thought he had help. Usually when you see a bust like that, and he's out there playing corner, he's on the boundary side playing corner, and he's kind of lets his guy run by him on a go route. And so the immediate thought is, well, he must think he had help behind him. And that happens all the time. You see busts like that all the time. But when I watch it back, I'm not sure. I don't know that he didn't. I don't know that he didn't just get lost on that play, because it doesn't look like there's any way that play call could have had anything to do with him having help over top. Because I don't know where his zone is. Like it's not like he had flats. He was playing about 20 yards off the ball. So I don't know what happened. He may have just got caught looking in the backfield.
I would say, based on the body language and hands on hips of every other defensive back, that is on Peters.
There's no question it's on Peters. That is definitely on Peters. And, he wasn't demonstrative. But like you said, the rest of the defense kind of looking around
it was there? Kind of weird, because it had to be man. But he had his eyes in the backfield like zone. Like it looked like off man, because what else could it be? He had nobody behind him, and there was a double move, but he looked more like he was in a trail position. He absolutely thought he had help over the top. He must have thought he had, but I don't know though, because
I don't know either. That's I've got to watch this, and this is the trouble with doing the post-game reaction, is that we haven't had a chance to watch the tape and go back. But that's one I really want to see, and I'd like to ask him about as well, because I'm at a bit of a loss as to what happened.
I mean, they didn't play 2. Like he acted like he thought they were in 2.
Yeah, that's how he played it, except that he's so deep. If he's in 2, then why is he 20 yards off? Like, if he's got flats, then why is he giving such a huge cushion to the receiver on the outside, Adams? Like, if he was in 2, then he would be trailing Adams fairly early on, and he clearly didn't have flats responsibility, because the halfback was underneath playing flats, playing down low, because there was a short route. So yeah, I don't know what happened on that play, but let's carry on. So fortunately, before the end of the half, and this was a huge play, right before the end of the half, I think there was 9 seconds left in the half, and Nick Arbuckle finds DeVaris Daniels on a double move that looked very familiar to us who watched the game last week, and connects for a 35-yard touchdown pass and puts Toronto up 22-14. They ended up missing the 2-point conversion, but 22-14 going to the half. But I want to talk about that play for a second, because this was there was something very, cathartic, emotionally pleasing about that touchdown pass, because it was the exact same thing that McLeod Bethel-Thompson missed on last week in Winnipeg. Everyone remembers that play. DeVaris isolated, there were quads to the other side. He had been setting it up the whole game, runs this 10-yard dig step. There's a pump fake, and then he takes off, and he was wide open, and McLeod Bethel-Thompson sailed it way over his head. Same play, other side of the field this time. DeVaris has that quick instep, cuts outside, and Arbuckle hits him in stride, just nails it. And that, to me, felt like some healing from the pain that we endured from last week's miss. And, just to score right before the half on a play like that, I thought was awesome. I felt at that point the Argos are going to win this game.
Yeah, the Winnipeg defensive back probably did what Peters did, which was thinking heat is coming, and they're going to heat this quarterback up, and he's going to try and go hot route or he's going to go short, and I'm just going to creep on this guy in zone and jump the throw.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. And on that play, Arbuckle had time. He did take a hit. He did take a hit after he let go of that ball, but he had enough time to set it up, execute a really nice pump fake, and then just sail it in there. That was such a relief. Like, it was, even from the crowd, you could hear this, like, it wasn't even a cheer. It was like a sigh of relief and then a cheer. Because everyone saw how wide open Tavares was. They see the ball in the air, and everyone has these flashbacks to last week. So, that's the score at the half. Argos in trouble, though, a little bit, it looks like, to start the third quarter. Winnipeg's driving again. They get down to the Toronto 30, but then Krapina's field goal attempt gets blocked, only goes in for a single, and Arbuckle puts together a really quick drive. And this was a nice adjustment, I thought, on Coach Dinwiddie's part. We can talk about what I thought of Coach Dinwiddie, what you thought of Coach Dinwiddie a little bit later on, but this I thought was a really nice adjustment in opening things up a bit, because the first couple drives of the second half didn't go well. The third quarter got off to a very poor start for the Argos offense. Winnipeg's adjustments were basically that they were, so early on, coverage-wise, they were really mixing it up. You know, they were sending, there was one, there was three, there were two different types of three, there was a few cover twos thrown in there. And Arbuckle was really good at identifying them right away. You could see the film study he'd put in. He identified the coverage and knew his response to the coverage. And that's the nice thing about Coach Dinwiddie's system, is that no matter what the coverage, there's an answer to it. It's just up to now the quarterback realizing what the coverage is and then finding that answer. And Arbuckle did that really well in the first half. So in the second half, they basically were just largely sticking to cover one. And the DBs were playing off, but with their feet set. So they're playing at distance. You know, they're backed up 10 yards or more, but with their heels set, ready to come forward. And so they were cutting everybody down on those underneath routes. And it was forcing Nick Arbuckle to hold on to the ball, and the pressure was getting home. So the adjustment they made was they started opening it up a little bit and throwing deeper. And to set up that next touchdown was a bomb to Dejan Brissett, 31 yards, and Arbuckle found him in behind coverage. I think he went down at the 1 yard line. It felt like he could have got in, but he just wanted to make sure he hung on to the ball. Ended up going down at the 1. Arbuckle sneaks it in behind Dylan Giffen, who was in there on short yardage, and suddenly it's 28-15, and we're breathing again.
Yeah, great catch by the rookie. He was obviously over the moon over the catch, and obviously, he wished that his first CFL catch were a touchdown, but there really wasn't any way to get in. I would have loved to have seen that route turn up into the end zone, but it was a great catch. He followed up with another catch. He looked the part. It was terrific to see. I think he's a guy that they're going to bring along, who is going to be a real contributor in the second half of the season.
Arbuckle talked after the game about how impressed he was with Brissett, because Brissett was basically backing up 4 different receiver spots this week. Because they were having to go a little heavier on the offensive line, they did have to shorten up in other places, and with the injury that we saw to Juwan Breskison, suddenly that put Brissett in a position where he had all these different positions that he had to know. He didn't know where he was going to go in, and he hadn't really played the boundary side much. And this is a position that he was suddenly put into late in the game, especially when Tavares was injured. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But how awesome is it for him to go in and have the game he had? He put up some great numbers, and it was, he didn't even know he was going to play today. So I think that was pretty awesome that he had such a good game. So we add a single. We've got another Boris Beatty bomb punt. I feel like that single was a 68-yard punt that Boris Beatty just absolutely blasted into the end zone. Argos now up 30-15. People are feeling comfortable as we move into the fourth quarter, and then Winnipeg starts making it close. They end up with a drive, like a real drive that they put together for the first time all game. And with the comfort, it was suddenly 30-23. They're within a touchdown. And everyone remembers the game from last night where we see Calgary-Montreal going down to the wire, and people were holding their breath thinking that's what is going to happen here. But no, the Argos string together a huge drive and are able to kneel out the clock. Arbuckle had a clutch pass to Ricky Collins Jr. And it was all set up by Braverman too, who had a really nice kickoff return. I thought his return game was fantastic today. The Argos were just so rarely in their own end because both his punt returns and kick returns were going for serious yardage.
I worry a little for Ricky if they keep running that play, that somebody is going to light him up when he makes that quick turn.
They have run that jailbreak screen for him a few times. This one looked a little bit different. The blocking was a bit different, but they love him coming underneath on that sort of reverse bubble.
Yeah, and it's really almost like a basketball play.
It is. It's set up like that. And I didn't see the linemen out in front the way that they were when they ran it back in Calgary, but they called that a few times today. Ricky Collins Jr. was getting a lot of short stuff, which we haven't really seen him get those other than that same play we just talked about in Calgary. A lot of his other stuff has been further downfield, but yeah, he was hit on a drag route, a couple quick screens. But yeah, I think people are going to be aware of that, but I'm okay with that. I think that just helps you set stuff up. Again, like pump and go, and it'll open stuff up downfield. So I'm fine with that. Anyway, the Argos win. That seals the victory. Just take a quick look at the stats here. What a game by Arbuckle. So 23 for 32, 310 yards, a touchdown, could have maybe been 2. And of course, he had a touchdown run himself, sneaking one in. To me, this answers a question. You and I talked early on in training camp about how the 2 question marks on this team were Nick Arbuckle and Coach Dinwiddie, because they were the only 2 quantities that were sort of unproven, that we didn't know already what they were. And I feel like both of those guys today went a long way towards answering these questions that we had. I feel very confident in Nick Arbuckle going forward, and I think even more confident in Coach Dinwiddie going forward.
Absolutely. I have been nothing but impressed with Coach Dinwiddie. I mean, every area that they've had an issue, they've addressed. You know, they had penalty issues. They only had 3 penalties today. You know, they're able to run the ball. They're able to pass the ball. They're able to adjust mid-game. They're able to adjust between games. You know, we talked about how this was such a test, and they passed with flying colors. They absolutely dominated Winnipeg. Full credit to Coach Dinwiddie. I think that he is, without a doubt, a quality head coach. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I don't think I could express it better. This staff outcoached Winnipeg significantly today. They had better adjustments coming in. They were hammering the Blue Bombers early on. Winnipeg adjusted, Toronto adjusted again. Winnipeg adjusted a third time, Toronto adjusted again. And they always had an answer. They were anticipating the next move. And every time Winnipeg did something, Toronto answered right back. He's got the respect of his players. And after a game like this, where they see that he's got the answers, it's only going to increase his credibility, which was already good among the players. And so I think he's set. I feel very confident going forward with Nick Arbuckle and with Coach Dinwiddie.
Look at the Winnipeg touchdowns, right? I mean, you have a strip sack on on a frozen left tackle. You know, you have that ridiculous catch at the end of the game, and you have an incredible bust. So you take those away, and it's 30-10. I just couldn't be more impressed with what they put together. I mean, they honestly, every box that we wrote about and talked about that we wanted to see, they checked.
And looking further down the stats, Zach Collaros, 54% completion rate.
Exactly.
204 yards. Like they completely stifled him. And the rushing game was invisible again, 28 yards. Brady Oliveira, their leading rusher, 7 carries for 28 yards. Zach Collaros had 1 carry for 4 yards, so 32 yards rushing for what was supposed to be the best running team in the league. 2 weeks in a row have been completely shut down by Coach Young and this defense. The other thing that stood out, we haven't had a chance to really talk about it much yet, DJ Foster. Out of nowhere, 10 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown. JB, what did you think of his play today?
Well, I mean, sort of out of nowhere. I'm sure that's what Winnipeg felt. He's an NFL quality athlete. He was on the New England practice squad. He played for Arizona. He is an elite athlete, and all you need from Americans who played in the NFL is buy-in. And if you get buy-in, if they don't come up here thinking that this is, some sort of second-rate league that they're going to muck about in, you might have yourself a star. He looked like a star tonight.
When I talked to him after the game, there were a couple of really interesting things. One thing that I thought, like, I actually got a bit emotional about was he talked about how he was having a really tough time. He was asked, I think it was Frank Ziccarelli from The Sun who asked him if what he was doing, basically, like how he ended up getting here, how this all transpired. And he basically said he was sitting at home and he was doing nothing, and he was not in a good place mentally, because he was thinking, well, this is, I'm a football player and I'm not playing football. And he got the call and came up and has completely embraced this opportunity. When I had a chance to talk to him a little bit about his expectations for the game, I asked him if he was expecting to be used this heavily. He's like, no, he did not. He wasn't part of, he wasn't a big part of this game plan. He knew he was going to get some touches, but I think it was largely going to be in relief of John White. And instead, when they realized he was running the ball so well, they're like, well, let's just keep feeding him. Because I thought the way they were going to use him was more in the passing game. He's a great receiver. That's what's going to make him such a threat in this league. He had over 1,000 yards receiving and rushing at Arizona State. Like, it's I believe someone in the press box was saying he's the only D1 player to ever have done that, which, if true, is pretty astonishing. And there he is, not even relying on his hands. They just used him as a runner, 10 carries for 101 yards. That's pretty awesome. I'm excited about him going forward.
Yeah, it's too bad for John White. But I think there's room, and obviously it's a long season, and you're going to need two backs, and they have slightly different skill sets. But he, I know the TV commentary talked about him potentially returning kicks. I wouldn't do that. I think that he's going to be your starting running back. I think that he, we'll see now that there's film on him, and it's not a complete surprise. I don't think it's going to be that easy every week, but certainly he is a great athlete to add to the team, and it added a spark to the team that they didn't have before.
You know what else was great to see today? All the players that were brought in to make a difference made a difference today on the offensive side of the ball. We already talked about Arbuckle's stats and what a great game he had. Deveris Daniels, who's been off to a really slow start, 7 catches on 8 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown. Eric Rogers, he's been contributing pretty solidly, actually, and he had another 5 catches today for 69 yards and made some really difficult contested catches. I actually thought he was a real key early on in getting the chains moving. Some of those early points that Toronto got were built off these foundation of Eric Rogers' contested catches on second and long. So I thought he was a real key element to that. And the players that were supposed to play well, and on the defensive side of the ball too, a good game from Charleston Hughes. All the guys that were supposed to play well are playing well, and that's what you want to see.
The question will be the injuries. That's really the only kind of down part of the whole night is, there were some pretty significant guys to go down. Obviously, Daniels, took that hit, which, I feel like Alexander should have been ejected for.
There wasn't even a flag initially. They did end up flagging it, but when that play happened, not a single official that I saw, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't see a flag thrown.
No, it was from the booth. The booth called it. Look, that play was perfectly fine 5 years ago. And in fact, it happened all the time.
10 years ago.
But that's just not football anymore. That play does not exist in football anymore. The safety patrolling the middle of the field and taking heads. It just doesn't exist. And it absolutely should have been an ejection. And, I was really disappointed to see it. But also, Arbuckle can't throw that ball.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's a pass you can't make. If there's help over top, you as the quarterback have to see that. The safety's got to be the first guy you spot. You always have to know as a quarterback, where's the safety? It's one of the first things you check. Where's the safety? And you see that he's got help over top. You've got a post route coming there or a dig, and you just can't lead your receiver into that guy. And Arbuckle knows that, and I'm sure he feels as bad as anyone on that. But on the other side of it, that's a hit that you can't make. And you, as a quarterback, have to kind of, I think part of the assumption you have to make too is that that's not a hit that's going to happen, because it's not a hit that's been allowed in football for a long time. So Tavares, I don't think there's any question that he's going to be out for at least for this Edmonton game. It's only a 5-day turnaround. They play Thursday. So I don't think we'll see Tavares out there. The other injuries of concern, Philip Blake went down, and I think he just, I don't know. What do I know? He's been nursing injuries from the very first half of this season and has found a way to play through. And hopefully this isn't something that is accumulating to a point where he just can't go, because he's a really important piece of that offensive line. He may be the most important piece on that offensive line. And then Jamal Peters went down late, and we'll have to see what his status is, because what that did, missing Robertson Daniel already, he's your number one corner. Jamal Peters came in to play that boundary spot for him. So what that caused was a shift where Tristan Deku had to come over to play the boundary side. He'd been playing field corner, and Matt Boateng went into the game as field corner. It wasn't for long. This was an injury that happened late. It was in the fourth quarter. So we didn't really get to see Boateng tested much. We didn't get to see Deku against the number one receiver on the Winnipeg side too much. But that could be a significant issue. And I don't know how far away we are from the return of Robertson Daniel. And I don't know the severity of Jamal Peters' injury, but that's one that worries me. And then Cameron Judge went down too. And I want to see what his health is like. Because again, with this short week, this short turnaround, these guys aren't all going to be able to play.
No, and I would rather keep them recuperating and do what we can without them and hold them out for Hamilton, which I think is a tougher game.
And yet this is a big game this week. You have to beat the Edmontons. If you're going to be in the conversation at the end with 4 games against Hamilton still to come, you have to win those games against Edmonton. So in some ways, I actually think this Edmonton game is more important than the Labor Day game against Hamilton. I think, I chalked it 30 seconds after the schedule came out, I chalked the Labor Day game as a loss. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay not winning that game. I really think the Argos need to win Thursday.
I'm not so sure if we're firing with everybody healthy. From what I've seen, from the way the team has progressed from week to week to week. And I'm not going to get into it now. Edmonton has not wowed me. I'll just say that.
They run well. And we will talk about that later in the week when we do our preview pod.
The return of Wilder.
The return of Wilder Jr. That's he will definitely be talking about that this week, and be sure that he has circled this date on his calendar, so he's very much aware. All right, JV, let's do our plays of the game and our players of the game. Let's start with our plays of the game. What did you think the play of the game was in your eyes?
I chose the defensive play by Deku to break up that potential touchdown at the end of the half by Winnipeg. I think if they score there, it absolutely changes the whole game. It's an old coach's line about 5 plays change any game, and that would be one of the 5 plays that won the game for the Argos with that pass breakup where it's fantastic to see a DB fight for the ball all the way to the ground. I know coaches are always driving that you never give up fighting for the ball, and he had it, and it was really just as they hit the ground and he was able to pull those hands apart. So I thought that was a huge play to not give up on that pass.
Tristan Deku had a terrific game. I thought he played really well. The one thing I worry about with him is he was in receivers' faces after every pass breakup, and I kept waiting for the flag and cringing and just holding my breath every time he broke up a pass, because he was right in their face. And good on some of the looking at the halfbacks who are in there right away. They immediately, as soon as Tristan makes a play, there's a halfback standing right beside him, getting in between he and the receiver to sort of say, yeah, that move you're doing, that gesture you're doing, that's directed to me. I know. Congratulations. Nice play. But they may have bailed him out in getting a penalty. So I'm sure he'll be talked to about that in film this week. But he had a great game. The guy wants to celebrate because he's having a great game. But you can easily draw a flag for that in this day and age. So he's got to be careful. For my play of the game, I went offensive, and I guess that's no surprise. It's the play I already talked about, the touchdown to Tavares Daniels. I thought that for so many reasons, not only to put the team up by a touchdown, going to the half to create a bit of distance and separation, but also to help us heal from last week, like I already said. I thought that was such a big moment, and there was no time left. It was, if they don't connect there, we may be talking about a field goal attempt, because the clock's ticking down. It's so hard to score right at the end of the half, to score a touchdown, because that they're already giving you the field goal because you're already in range there, especially with Boris Bede. So they're giving you that to then go over top for a passing touchdown, which also helps stretch out the defense. I thought was a huge win. So that's my play of the game. All right, let's do players of the game. Let's do offense first, as it should be. JB, who's your offensive player of the game?
For me, DJ Foster. I thought he set the tone early with that touchdown. Winnipeg was kind of shocked at who was this guy that they didn't know was on the Argos, and his hunger for the red zone. And I thought he had a huge run right after Daniels was hurt, which really brought the stadium and the team back into the game. He gave the Argos a sense of swagger, the way he was not just running, but like running up the middle and running tough against Winnipeg, which prides himself on being the toughest bully in the league. I thought DJ Foster was the player of the game.
For me, the offensive player of the game was Tavares Daniels. And why I'm choosing Tavares, like, you could go several directions here. I just thought he looked like what Toronto brought him in to be. He looked like the best receiver on the field, and that's what he's supposed to look like. And I didn't get that sense from him in week 1 or 2, and maybe it was the way he was being used. Maybe it was the sort of injection of having Nick Arbuckle put in there, who he clearly has a great rapport with. You notice in that first half, Arbuckle kept going to, it was Tavares Rogers, back and forth, his Calgary guys that he's had a chance to work with before. It's in a different situation, obviously, with Daniels being a couple years ago, but receivers he's familiar with and comfortable with, that know this system well. I thought he and Rogers worked so well together in the concepts that they had. They were often on the same side of the field together, Rogers and Daniels, and they had some really nice route combinations that they ran to perfection, where both were wide open. And now it put the onus on Arbuckle to have to choose, which guy do I go to? But yeah, he played a great game. He looked like a number one receiver. His stats are amazing. 100 yards receiving is excellent, with the touchdown, of course, too. Hopefully, Tavares can get back soon, because his team definitely needs him. But more importantly, anytime you've got a head injury like that, you worry. And I just, I hope Tavares is doing okay. And it was just such a shame, especially after the performance that I know he would have been so proud of and so happy for. So he's my offensive player of the game. Where are you going for defense?
Well, I thought there were a couple of different guys that I was interested in. I thought that Charleston Hughes played really well. Mm-hmm. I thought that obviously Deku played well. I thought Shaq again had a really nice game. But for me, I'd probably have to go with McCoyle.
Yeah, I would pick McCoyle too, probably for the same reasons that you're about to name.
Well, I thought he was everything that we thought he might be when they signed him. He was all over the field. That he's got great hands. He's a fantastic weapon on blitzes. He's a sure tackler. He's a physical tackler. His closing speed is elite. He's absolutely a tone setter out on the defense. When you have a guy like that who flies to the ball, who can sack the quarterback, who's got the hands to make a pick, everybody feeds off that. And from offenses, I'm sure offenses are now identifying where McCoyle is pre-snap.
Yeah, and it's such a luxury to have so many great linebackers out there. And he was all over the place, like you said. He was in coverage a lot. He made two amazing solo tackles. He had that pick, of course, and he's just so dependable back there. And it got to a situation where when Cameron Judge went down, as valuable as Judge is to this team and as good a linebacker as he is, I wasn't worried because there's McCoyle. You've also have Diggs out there who actually did a really nice job filling in when he came in. He ended up with a number of snaps at the end of the game after Judge went out. And so, it's a position that they're so deep. They've already lost Kassar and, possibly now Judge. And yet I'm okay. I think the linebackers looked excellent. And yeah, McCoyle was, for me, the easy answer for defensive player of the game because, like you said, he was everywhere. He was causing problems in the run, against the pass. He was clearly in Collaros' head, too. And just great decision-making out there. Well, that will just about do it for us today on the X's and Argos post-game reaction podcast brought to you by Funny Bone Broth. Don't forget to check out our site all week. We'll have a lot of great stuff up there. JB's got his report card that's already out. We've got a video piece coming up later on in the week. I've got a preview coming up of the Edmonton Elks. And plus, JB and I will be back before Thursday's game with our preview podcast. And it's all coming up in a really short amount of time. So be sure to check the website for everything you need. That will just about do it for us. For JB, my name is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.